All right, so we're going to start the webinar for today. Today's webinar is on the event management module, specifically focusing on the private events, so private banquets where they are member or non-member hosted. The club events webinar will be held tomorrow. So during the webinar, for those who haven't attended in the past, the phones will be muted. You can use the chat box to direct questions directly to me if you have questions that need to be answered throughout the webinar. If you can hold them to the end, please do so, and we will have a question period at the end of the session. A copy of the session will be available online to download in a PDF version as well as a video. The webinars are to enhance your knowledge of the Jonas Encore software and act as a refresher for those people that have already taken detailed training on the Encore system by a certified Jonas trainer. The webinar will be approximately 50 minutes of information with 10 minutes for any questions and answers. I'm going to mute the lines unless anyone has anything that they need to ask prior to starting. So the event management module in terms of private banquets will be covering the booking and billing application for private functions, how it links to point of sale for billing items, and the fact that it allows private functions for members and non-members. So outside of the event management module, there are several pieces that we use in event management. So point of sale sales items are used to create billable items in both the functions and registration events. So when you're building an event and you have menu items, food and beverage items, things like that, those are actually point of sale sales items that will need to be set up first. In order to access those sales items in the event module, you will need a point of sale sales categories flagged with the option as to the type of item associated with the category. So when you're creating the point of sale sales category, you want to flag it appropriately. Is it event pricing? And this covers for registration events, which is tomorrow's webinar. Is it a food item, a beverage item, or is it an other service item, such as labor, cake cutting, valet, parking? The importance of flagging your category appropriately is so that your sales items, when added to an event, pull to the appropriate spot on your BEO or your banquet event order. If you put, say, a chicken buffet sales item in a beverage category, so it's flagged as beverage, then when you add that chicken buffet to your event setup, it's going to show under the beverage header on your BEO. So it is important that you have separate sales categories. You can have multiple categories, but they should be flagged appropriately for food, beverage, other, or event pricing. In terms of integrating event management with golf tournaments and events, those sales items would fall under other services. Other aspects outside of the event management module are billing items. So the same thing goes with billing item categories. When we create billing items and they belong to a category, the category must be flagged appropriately for event management use. So a billing item category is either going to be a facility-related charge or a resource charge. And again, this is because when you're building your event, these carry over to the BEO according to how you've categorized them. They also show up in your event setup, either in the facility tab or in the resource tab, depending on what category they belong to. So often clients will say, I can't find this new resource I set up. I don't know what happened to it. Well, if it belongs to a category that's flagged for facility charges, then you'll never see it in the resource tab because it's flagged inappropriately. So just make sure when you're creating billing items that it's either flagged in the appropriate category of facility or resource charges. Billing items for event management must be contained in a billing item category flagged for one of the two in order to set up your resource properly. Otherwise, you're not going to see these billing items that you create. So setups that you must have in order to start building an event. You must have an activity type. Okay, these are found in system administration. So you need a general description of events and where they can be booked. So an activity type is normally a banquet or a private party and a club event. You'll need employees and employee groups. You must have at least one employee set up in your system because in order to build an event, you must have a convener of that event or an event coordinator. So you have to have at least one staff person set up. You need seating styles, and so this is how the party will be set up: rounds, cocktails, reception style, classroom, boardroom setting, U-shaped. So you're going to create these seating styles for as many combinations as you do have. A best practice with this is to also create a seating style called seat description, so that if you have a seating style that doesn't follow the other 20 that you've created, you have a go-to or a catch-all. You'll also need task groups. So a task group is a reminder or list type of something to do for an event. And so when we create tasks in a group, in an event, you must have a group to put that in. A best practice for creating task groups is to have a setup task group and a teardown task group, because most of the tasks associated with the event are either related to setting it up or tearing it down. You also need event stages. At minimum, you must have canceled, completed, and open or confirmed, but you could also have additional stages such as proposed or contract received or prospect. When you're creating the event stages, you'll flag what those statuses mean. So you'll flag whether or not you want to reserve the facility or whether you want to stop registration if something changes to that status. So for example, the canceled status would not reserve the facility and it would stop registration, because if we change an event to canceled, we don't want the facility reserved anymore because it's not happening. So we talk a little bit about facilities. So facilities are the physical location of an event. It indicates what type of activity can be booked into the facility. A facility also houses the seating styles that are eligible for that room and the price to book the room. So facilities have a lot of settings, and if these aren't properly linked up, then this may be a reason why you can't see a certain facility or why you can't find a certain seating style. So when you create a facility, you have to be able to say, yes, it is eligible for this type of event. So for example, if you create the ballroom as a facility, you would say what events it's eligible to be booked for. Okay, if you're having a golf tournament, the ballroom is probably not eligible for that. So when you're setting up the facility, you would not flag it for a golf tournament event type. And that would restrict what you're seeing when you're booking an event, so that you don't see a huge list of facilities when you're booking, say, a golf tournament, because it can only really be booked in specific facilities. Again, the seating styles are tied to that facility, so if you can't find a seating style when you're booking a facility, then chances are you have not attached that seating style to the facility. So if we just flip quickly to the Encore software, I'm just going to show you some of our facility setups here. And when we talk about facilities, there's a lot of settings that are involved in the facility, so not just seating styles and event types, but also the room rental fee. So when you're creating a facility, whatever you put as the room rental fee attached to that facility will be the default rate when booking that facility. So that's the default charge associated with that room rental, but you can always override it when you're booking that room. So maybe it's $500, but for a certain event you override it and say it's only $250. It's very flexible in that way, but you still do attach that default rate to the facility level. So if we pull a boardroom and we go to our event management tab, it's important that we flag that this facility can be reserved for events. Then it asks, what's the default sales area if we're using the boardroom? Okay, so you could have club events, banquets, catering. So you just pick one as the default area, and then you say this facility can be used for the following event types. Then you would flag what type of events could be booked in the boardroom. Here's where we attach the seating styles. So you would pull this down and you would say in the boardroom I could have banquet of 10, banquet of 8. I could also do half rounds and a U-shape. Okay? Seating assigned means that these seatings are eligible for club events, and that will be discussed in the club events webinar. You can also set setup time and teardown time in minutes, which would help reserve the facility outside of the regular event hours for that extra time to do setup. We'll talk a little bit about tasks later. Here we say which activity types you could book the boardroom for, so the general or broad level. And then this is the pricing tab that I was talking about. So it's very important here that we pull the correct billing item. Okay, again, that would be in a billing item category of facility rentals. And then you can put a default member price and a default retail price, which is your non-member price. Again, whatever is listed here is the default room rental rate, but it does not mean that you can't change it upon booking an event. And then you would hit save to save your work. There's just a screenshot here where the dining room could also be booked for events. And there's the individual settings that you can see in here. So we'll talk a little bit about resources, and resources are also found in system administration. So resources are items that are rented with bookings. So you can track the availability of your resources. So if you have a projector and you only have one of them, you can track this so that you don't double book that machine. I also have clubs that are creating tables as resources because they may have a certain number of cocktail tables or a certain number of rounds, and so they'll track them and their availability. You can also restrict where resources are used. So maybe you cannot have the projector in the dining room because there's nowhere to facilitate the screen or the AV hookups. Resources also will have standard pricing. So a resource will have a billing item behind it, just like the facility does. And that resource will have a billing item that will direct the GL allocation and the pricing of that resource. Again, the pricing can be changed on the fly. And the billing item would be flagged as a resource type billing item category. So here we're looking at a screenshot from our resources section. You can see here I've got flip chart markers, high chair, projector. Other resources that are kind of thinking outside of the box that a lot of clubs will use are labor, kitchen labor, valet parking attendants, DJ or outside labor that they hire, where you can charge per person or per hour of use of that labor. Anything that either has an additional cost or that you want to track the availability of. We'll talk a little bit about event types. So an event type is what you're booking into the event module. So our event types are either private events or registration events, like club events. We'll talk about that again in a separate webinar. Every event type must have eligible stages. So what stages could I have for an event? So a wedding is an event type, and it would have a stage of tentative or proposed, confirmed, completed, and canceled. You can add additional stages if your club has multiple tiers of, say, accepting an event at the club. Every event type can have employees listed, and those are employees that are eligible to work that event. And what that means is that we can add employee names to the BEO or to the event creation to say that these employees are working. You can have tasks associated with an event type. So instead of typing a task in on the fly, you're saying that an event type would always have these tasks. So we call them standard tasks. So if on a wedding, you're always setting up the chairs and the chair covers and setting up the AV equipment, then you could say that those are tasks that need to be done if the event is a wedding. You also have extra information fields, and these are custom fields you can create that are linked to an event type, so such as the outside flower company or the outside DJ or the name of certain contacts that you want to associate with that wedding event type. So they're custom fields, and these could be checkboxes, they could be text fields, they could be numeric fields. These extra info fields allow you to capture information that maybe we don't have already in the event setup. These are organizational fields, they're information capturing. They do not show up on the BEO printout. They are simply for internal use to store information. Facilities are also linked to event types, so we talked a little bit about this before when we were looking at facilities. And when you create an event type, you specify which rooms or which facilities that event type could be booked into. You can also add checklists to an event type. So you can have a checklist for birthday parties or a checklist for weddings so that they're specific checklists to that type of event. So this is what your event type setup is going to look like. Again, when we're talking about private parties, private events, or banquets, we're looking at the event format of banquet, conference, meeting, not registration required. Another setup for the event management module is service types. And a service type is basically what are we providing the client with. So a service could be open bar, it could be a cash bar, it could be buffet dinner, buffet lunch, plated lunch, afternoon break, meeting setup, linen service, it could be continental breakfast, so any service that we're providing to the client. The more specific you get, the more detailed your BEO will look like. Service types kind of act like a title on your BEO, and then once you list the service type, underneath comes all those sales items that are a part of that service. So we would say plated lunch, and then underneath we would actually have the sales items of what they ordered for that plated lunch. When you create the service types, you do say what categories, point of sale categories are eligible for that service. So again, if it's a plated lunch, you're going to choose your food service categories, appetizers, entrees, desserts. If it's related to beverage service, then you're going to choose your beverage-related categories. Okay, so you can see some examples here on the screen. I have some clubs with very generic service types, but I also have some clubs that have gone into quite detailed between associating or differentiating between plated versus buffet, preset menus, the type of bar, if it's host paid for, afternoon snack breaks, you know, all of the different components of an event, especially if it runs the length of the day, they'll make their service types quite detailed. And then you can see here there's the sales item categories that we're flagging as eligible. And that just helps when you're choosing, say, dinner buffet, you can actually restrict to see only sales items that comes from these eligible categories so that you don't see, you know, beer and wine listed when you're trying to choose your dinner buffet sales items. So when we talk about sales items that fall under a service type, you can add items on the fly. So you could go create an event and just pull sales items onto that BEO as you're going along. Or you can set up event menus ahead of time. So an event menu is a library of service items that have descriptions, note fields, and sales items. So what it can do is it can speed up the entry of events, and you can create these event menus ahead of time to save you work when you're entering similar events over and over. So some clubs do not use event menus at all because they have such a diverse and customizable menu where to create menus ahead of time, they're never going to maintain that standard. But I also have some clubs that have, you know, a go-to menu that they'll pull onto the screen for every event setup, and they modify it as, say, a member says, you know, I do want this, I don't want that. So I personally like to set up event menus because it saves you a lot of time upon event entry, but sometimes you just have a situation at the club where every time you host an event, it's something different, and so event menus will not work in that scenario. So you can see here my event menu, I've set up a breakfast buffet, and that's my sales item right here in orange, and that's where the cost is associated with. And then I've set a note field where I give a description of what it includes. So in event management, if we go to our event menus here, if you look at this event menu, Continental Breakfast, and you look at the sales items, this Continental Breakfast, the way we've organized it, we've done 3 different Continental options. So these are like add-ons. They're sales items with a price. So this is a preset menu, but if the client doesn't want yogurts, then at the time of booking, I could delete that entire line. Just going to find another example here. So here for dinner entrees, I've got a note, and this is how it would appear on the BEO. This is choice of salad with entree, and then I've listed all the different salads they could choose from. And then I list all of their entrees down below, each with an associated price. And again, the client's not going to pick all of these, so I'll just delete the one they do not want. Okay, so it's a way of organizing all your choices in one spot, and then you can delete out what you do not want at the time of booking. I'm just going to find another one here. So here's another one. We have Butler past hors d'oeuvres. That's where the price is derived from as a sales item. Then we have a note that says choose 3 of the following. And then I've added all of these sales items to my menu. no price associated with them, but they are sales items so that I could still track which were chosen. So at the time of adding this menu to an event, I would just delete the lines that they don't want instead of having to find the ones that they do. So it's just a different perspective of thinking of organizing this, and you can, decide which makes the most sense for your club. So again, here I add a note, which gives me my choose from one of the following entrees. Then I have my entrees, choose one of the following appetizers, and I have my appetizers. And then I would pull choice of one dessert, and you would continue in this process. Budgeting, so you can set up budgets to forecast the cost of the event. This is mainly used to assist your clients if they come to you and say, I have a budget of $100 per head, and then you can kind of take a look at what is it costing you as a club to run this event and what are your margins. So the budgeting tool allows you to enter the costs of your sales items and services as either a percentage of the sales price, manual input, or a standard cost from the sales item record itself, so that you can actually look at the budgeting tab and the system will calculate what the cost of all of your service items are, comparing that with what you're charging the client for, and see if there's any room for adjusting. So you normally have budget categories: beer, food, liquor, wine, resources, facility charges, and then you can choose the costing method. Standard phrases are another aspect of event management setup. These can be very helpful, especially if you find yourself always typing in the same notes into events over and over. So a standard phrase is information that can be repeatedly entered into bookings. And if your wording is very specific, it can reduce the chance that you have errors or typos in your BEO setup. So a standard phrase is basically a preset phrase or paragraph or wording that you can easily right-click and add to an event instead of having to type it out each time. So for example, club dress code would be a standard phrase. And then what this would do is allow us to type in a description for the club dress code, no jeans or running shoes, etc. And then instead of having to type this onto every BEO, I can just right-click simply and add it to the event. So when we're talking specifically about private functions, at minimum we need to know who is the person that we're billing for the event, when is the event, where is the event being hosted, and this could be in multiple facilities, the seating style for the event, what kind of event it is, so these are your preset event types, and who is the employee or the salesperson or the event coordinator that's associated with the booking, because remember, you do need at least one employee. Once you start building your private function, you can add services and other resources to the booking, so food services, beverage services, and resources. And on the main page of your booking screen, you're going to get this summary, which will show you a breakdown of what you've added to the event and how you've built it. So services, resources, and the charges associated with it at the bottom summary. So when you're adding services, you want to select a service type, which again acts as kind of a header or a title on your BEO. And along with the service type, you choose where in the clubhouse, so what facility, and when, what time it's happening. This will show on the BEO as well as the start time for that service. Then you'll add sales items to the service, which are your descriptions, the quantity, and the price. You can either add individual sales items or you can add event menus. And so this is the screen here that we have. So you can see my service types listed at the top area and my sales items listed below. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to walk through it in event management to walk through how those sales items would get added to an event. So when we're creating an event, again, you need, at bare minimum here, we need an event name. So we could call this a private party. Then you'll choose the event type that it belongs to, and you'll choose the event type. Okay, so you'll enter the client's information, which is the member who is hosting. If you know the member's number, you can just key it in directly. If it's a sponsored event, you would choose the member who's sponsoring down below. If you need to add or edit phone numbers, you can choose contact info as event specific, and you can easily just change, say, an email address down here. That way it's not going to save to this members file. Then again, we're going to go to our facilities tab, and that's where we're going to specify where the event is occurring. Let's just quickly change the time here, the morning event. So in the facilities tab, we'll choose the facility that this is occurring in. Of course, my setups do not yet permit that. We'll choose a seating style if applicable, an activity type if applicable, and then start date and end time. And so again, it's pulling that start time and end time from the above settings. So it's always smart to fill that in first. Many of your facilities will copy that. Again, I could always adjust it if I needed to say specific time parameters per facility. You can put your agreed, expected, and confirmed number of people. This just allows you 3 different areas to put the number of guests that are attending. And then there's the default facility rental price. So let's talk a little bit about services now. When we add a service, what's called a breakfast buffet, again, I can specify start and end parameters. I could specifically just drop down my sales item here and start typing. Okay, anything with the word chicken in it is going to pull up. The other thing that I could do, though, if I have preset menus, is go to my item selector. And that item selector is going to allow me to click on any one of my preset menus. See how it just builds that, and so it rolls it all in, and then I can just delete what they don't want. So butler, past hors d'oeuvres, choose 3 of the following, and then I can just click to the left, they don't want that, hit my delete key on my keyboard, hit my delete key, and that's an easy way of just getting rid of what they don't want. So now I've chosen 3, and I can hit save and close. Okay, and then that adds it to the screen. So that's where the menus can be very helpful because I'm not searching for items. They're already all laid out on the screen for me, and I just delete what I don't want simply by hitting delete on my keyboard. Then the next tab is resources. You're going to add a group description for your resources on an ad hoc basis. And so this is just another heading or a title that will show up on the BEO. Most clubs just use one group description called resources, although if you have multiple resources, you want them segregated on the BEO so that different departments who are responsible for different aspects can see that resource broken down by group. Then you may have a resource group called AV equipment, and a resource group called labor, and a resource group called other services or other items. Once you have the group description, then you can add specific resources. So if I go here to my resource, I could type in a generic description, again with a date and time filter, and then I'd choose my resources. Okay. You can also do notes on the fly here, so you could pull a resource just with a note and type in need extra tablecloth. Okay, so notes can work as well. There's just no quantity or price associated with those. Then we talked a little bit about employees. This is where you could add employees who will work the event. This is optional. You do not need any employees set for your event. You just need an event coordinator, which we'll cover in the other tab. So once you've built your BEO, you can review the forms for those events. So you can see the contract, which is standard form with club information. You can look at an event order, a function sheet. The difference between your event order and the function sheet is one is internal, normally doesn't have prices on it so that you can hand it out to your staff. And a function sheet would be one that you give to the client to confirm prices, and so that would have prices on it. You also have an invoice, which will give you a standard form invoice with club information, logo on it, and that will total the charges for that event. You can also add other forms to the module, such as user-defined letters or contracts or other Word documents. So when you build your event, you can see here on the Forms tab, you'll have multiple events with the ability to print preview, or email if you have email settings set up. And that email will send to the information listed in client info, so whoever's email is listed there. You can send multiple events in one email, multiple forms, in one email, so that if you're communicating with a client, you want to send them the function sheet and the invoice or the function sheet and the contract, you can send them both. Once you've entered the private function, you've printed your forms, the event has occurred, now you're ready to bill that private function. So there's kind of two aspects of billing a private function. One is entering any deposits that you've received, and those would be entered as you receive them. And then payments are money that you've received after the event has occurred to pay it off. So if you're a club that enforces a policy where the member has to pay up front or on the day of the event and pay off their bill, they can't charge it to a member account. Or if it's a non-member event and obviously they don't have an accounts receivable with you, so they're paying on the day of, that's a payment. So the payments and deposits are applied against the total billing upon final posting of a booking. So if you've taken deposits or payments to pay off the balance, those will be offset with what you would bill out to the client if any balance remained. So the amounts would post to the payment item general ledger, so debit your bank account, and then the payment or deposit holding account, which is normally a crediting of an account called deposits for Banquets. The amounts will move from that holding account upon billing of the booking. So we take the deposit, the money goes into our bank, it's held in a holding account for deposits. When we bill out that event and it's finalized and we're posting it, the money comes out of that holding account and offsets the total to be billed. When you're billing the function, whether or not it's been fully paid off or whether or not you're going to bill and charge any remaining balance to a member account, we offer you two options, a pre-post and a final post. The pre-post is optional. The pre-post allows you to post revenues and taxes, but hold the total amount in an AR holding account until you finalized. So the member account is not affected. You are not debiting your AR account and charging that member for any owed balance, versus the final post will actually hit and impact that accounts receivable for the hosting member if there's a balance owing. So why would we do a pre-post? If it's month end and you need to post those revenues, you're looking at budgets and financial statements, you need those numbers in your books, you would do a pre-post so that it hits your revenue accounts, your tax accounts, but you still have the ability to add or credit items off of that event, so you are expecting changes. If you are just ready to post the event and, if a member comes back and has a dispute over any of the items, you'll manually adjust it via AR, then you can go ahead and do the final post. So the pre-post is just an optional feature where if it's month end, you need to get those numbers in, but you may still add or credit items off of that event, then go with the pre-post. The final billing will hit the member account and it will post revenues and taxes of any non-pre-posted items, and then that's when it takes any payments or deposits out of that holding spot and create the charge in member account if there is a balance owing. So here's what the screen looks like here. You can see the charges listed in the top portion of the screen. Then in the bottom left, you have your pre-post GL summary, and on the right, you have the final post summary. So the only difference here is that the function deposit is being relieved on the right-hand side because that's a final post. The deposit is not relieved in a pre-post because it's still a pre-post, assuming changes could be made. And then the difference is just this total amount. So we are debiting an AR account for $8,300 versus $10,000 because of that deposit, which is being applied upon final post. The other tab in event management is where we can find tax or service charge exemptions. So if you have a charitable organization hosting a private event and they are exempt from tax or service charge or both, we can flag them so that taxes and service charges are not calculated into the bill of that event. You can also change the status of the event, so you can cancel the function, you can change it from proposed to confirmed, and that will affect different settings and whether or not we can post that event. The budgets tab, so this is midway through your event setup. If you've set up budget categories and you do want to track budgets and costs versus selling prices of proportions of that event, then you can run the budgets tab to see what your margins look like. So here's our screen. You can see here the budget categories we've set up. You can see the revenue, which would be based on sales items and resources that you have entered into the event itself. You can have calculated costs if you want the system to calculate the cost of those items for you based on a predetermined percentage, or you can come to the entered cost and enter an approximate cost of food and cost of sales. And then it will compare basically your expense versus revenue for your profit line. And that's where you can look and say, okay, our profit is approximately $5,000 for food. You know, the bride and groom need to adjust their budget, and we could put in a quantity and unit price and their budget total there and compare. If we lower our revenues, can we still, you know, profit enough while also adapting to what their budget needs are? So it's kind of a tool for your clients. After you put through events, you've posted events, you have event bookings, there are multiple reporting options. I'm just going to go through them briefly on the screen here. You can see we have an event bookings, which is just for private functions, event charges, which is looking at your potential billings by type, food, beverage, resources, and facilities. So this is actual dollar value associated with bookings you have. Event listings is all events, so private functions as well as club events. This is a good, you know, summarized report that you can hand out to staff. Event registrations is the same thing as event bookings except for event registrations only versus private functions. Event tasks is a listing of all the tasks that you have set up for events. A payments and deposits report is also quite useful. It will show you a listing of payments and deposits received. And so you can look at, you know, are we still awaiting deposit checks from certain events? You can look at a P&L, which is a report of your revenue and cost per event. Now, that is only available if you have put in that cost information. And then a registration log, which shows you a tracking of registering people for club events, and that will be covered in tomorrow's session. So your reports are found in the event management module under reports. And they're also found on your toolbar as well if you have quick keys to them. A new reporting option is found in the business intelligence module. So we do now have special report types for event banquet bookings. So you can see there's my report type. Event banquet bookings is the report. This is new to business intelligence, and it will give you fields such as event booking information, client information or host information, extra information or custom fields, facilities, services, and resource information. So if you were unable to find a report in the past from the canned event management reports, you now have the option in business intelligence to create your own. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I'm just going to unmute the lines for anyone who has any questions. So does anyone have any questions in regards to private functions in the event management module?